Welcome to the Hungarian History Podcast. I am your host, Szántai Gábor. This is a special series, or 22nd episode, released between the symbolic dates of October 23rd and November 11th. This is the perfect time to commemorate the 19 days of the 1956 Hungarian Revolution and freedom fight. In the aftermath of those stormy days, nearly 200,000 Hungarians made the impossible decision to leave their homeland, scattering to every corner of the free world. They carried with them stories of courage, loss, and the hope for a new beginning. This podcast is built from those stories. Over the next episodes, you will hear a series of short, intimate interviews with people from across the globe, those who witnessed these events as children, or more commonly now, the sons and daughters who grew up with these stories as a fundamental part of their identity. How do they remember? What vivid memories were passed down to them? And what is their message for us today? I must warn you, by opening this door, I have been met with a wave of powerful testimonies. Dozens of stories are coming in, so many that they will require not one but several podcast episodes to honor them all. In each conversation, I ask three simple questions. Who are they? What is their story? And how did their journey change their lives? The goal is simple: to pay tribute to the heroes and to preserve these voices while we still can. So embrace yourself. Let's listen. Today we have three guest speakers from the United States. Thank you very much for responding my call. Well, I'm Gábor from Budapest, and I am running a podcast called the Hungarian History Podcast, and you are my first guest speaker about 1956, Paul, so I greet you here, and please introduce yourself. Where are you from?
I was born here in Portland, Oregon. And I was born in 1961. My father escaped Hungary in 1956 after the revolt.
So you are a first generation.
First generation American, yeah.
I see. So I have spent some years in the United States myself. I used to live in Denver, Colorado.
Yes.
But I visited your region as well, and there are many Hungarians and first, second generation. And could you please, Paul, tell me and my listeners something about your father and how he arrived to the United States?
Yes. First, I want to let you know that my father felt a lot of trauma from the experience of the revolution.
Yes.
And he did not talk about it very much. He did not talk about it very much with me and the family. On the other hand, he did, who had the same experiences that he had.
I see.
So, like you said, a lot of very many Hungarian refugees came to Portland, Oregon. So he had a lot of Hungarian friends who had his same experiences. He was in the army at the time. So my father was born in 1933. So in 1956, he was 23 years old. He was in the army at the time. He was a corporal. And his duty, his position, was stationed on the Austrian border. And from what he told me, he helped many Hungarians to escape from Hungary into Austria.
Literally, he risked his life with that.
Yes, he did. And he and his patrol remained at the border for 3 weeks, assisting Hungarians to escape. I have not been to that region of the border. I've been to Budapest and Balaton, but I have not been to that region of the Hungarian and Austrian border. I don't know what the landscape looked like, but from what I understand, there was no clear definition of the border. There was what we call in English a no man's land,
kind of,
like a thick forest, and it was difficult to get through the forest from Hungary into Austria.
It was a killing.
Yes. But so my father and his patrol in the army knew how to get through, and they assisted others to get there.
Wow. So it helped other people.
Yes. And then when after a few weeks, there were fewer Hungarians trying to get through. So he and the patrol that he was with left Hungary and went into Austria.
Yes.
And they had civilian clothes. They walked through the forest. My father told me a funny story that he was not sure when. He was not sure exactly at one point they crossed the border, and in the morning they saw a man walking with his cows, and because this man looked like he was not dangerous, they walked towards him, and the man greeted them by saying "Grüß Gott." So they knew that they were in Austria at that point.
What a feeling.
Yeah. He lived for a few months in Vienna in a refugee camp.
Yes.
And then there was an opportunity to go to New York City. So he went to New York, and then after a little while in New York, the news was that there was a group of businesses and Hungarians here in Portland, Oregon, who were assisting refugees to come to Portland and to help them to get established, to get jobs, to get homes, and start a new life. So it was funny. At the time that he left Hungary, of course, he had heard of New York, but he had never heard of Portland, Oregon. So he came to Portland, Oregon without any knowledge of what it was like.
Yes, I can imagine. I met some Hungarian people who came over in '56 in Colorado, and I experienced that they had to work twice harder than any locals to be accepted by the society. So your dad must have had a very hard beginning.
Yes, it was difficult. Now, I also know that when my father was in school, he learned the sheet metal trades, and I found his certificate that showed that he was a trained journeyman sheet metal worker in Hungary. So, from what I understand, It's kind of funny because he told me that he dropped out of high school when he was 15 or 16 years old and then went to trade school. But I think that was a very common educational path.
It was indeed.
Yeah, he did not do. I know the German word Gymnasium, which is the early college. He did not do Gymnasium, and instead he went to trade school to learn sheet metal work.
But it was very nice of him that he was helping his countrymen to escape the regime.
Yes.
And you are very lucky that you were born in the United States.
Yes, I feel fortunate for that. What I was trying to say here, though, is that because my father had a certificate as a sheet metal journeyman, when he came to the United States, when he came to Portland, the first thing he did is he got a job in a sheet metal shop.
Yes.
And he stayed with that job for 40 years.
Okay. Are you here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sometimes the connection is not the best.
Yeah.
Wow. And tell me, Paul, and what does it mean to you, this whole thing, this revolution in 1956? So is it still with you?
Yes. So I only understand from watching my father and his friends talk and reminisce how much they missed Hungary. They missed the Hungary of their youth. How sad they were to have to leave, and their desire to make Hungary what it used to be. And then on the other hand, I also got to see and appreciate the difference in the United States. So my father was the only one in his family to escape and come to the United States.
That's a difficult and hard thing. Psychologically, it must have been very hard to him. And could he return for a visit?
Yes, he did return many times.
Good.
He did return to visit many times, and then I went to go visit. Our family went to visit in 1972. I was 11 years old,
Okay.
and then I also went again in 1984 when I was 23. My father made several trips to go visit. Now, the more significant visit for me was in 1984 when I was 23 years old. And I stayed with my uncle, Carly, and visited with my aunt, Rita, and we talked about the differences in the economics.
There are differences.
And yes, so my uncle Carly lived in a very, very old apartment building. The same apartment building that the family grew up in, the same apartment that my father grew up in as a child. I don't know what the status is, if they owned it or rented it. I don't know if it was like a condominium or whatever, but that's not important. The fact is that the apartment had basically two rooms plus a kitchen and a bathroom. So a family with 6 children grew up in these 2 rooms.
Yes, it is not uncommon.
I'm sorry?
It is usual. It was usual at the time.
Yeah. And then also my Uncle Carly did not have a car. And we I remember in traveling through Budapest, we took the bus everywhere and the train. So I had a visit with my uncle, my aunt, my cousins, and they asked me. So my father did not tell them exactly how great things were here in the United States because he didn't want to be belittling to them.
Thank you, Paul, for telling us your wonderful story. Now, John is our next guest on Hungarian History Podcast. John, let me greet you in the Hungarian History Podcast. It is a special edition about 1956, and we have many people from all corners of the world with their experiences about 1956. They either were adults at the time or kids, but they have important message to the world about 1956. So this is John Molnár here. And John, can I ask you, where are you from?
I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, in the United States.
I see. And where were you born?
I was born in the United States. My grandfather, grandmother, and my dad came to the United States in 1956, shortly after the revolution had started.
I see. So, and do you have some recollections or some memories about their experiences?
So they left, and my pronunciation may be off just because I'm not fluent in Hungarian, but they lived in Moson, Magyar, and they left Moson in November 22nd, 1956, and went to Austria where one of my grandmother's sisters lived. Prior to that, my grandfather and grandmother both worked in a textile factory in Moson. And
that's difficult. I know. Motion.
Motion.
Yes.
So they both, they worked in a textile factory. My grandmother sewed things, seamstress, and then my grandfather was kind of like a general maintenance man in the factory as well as a master electrician.
Yes.
My grandfather at times was, I guess, prior to the Russians coming in, he was taken by maybe police, communist police, I guess, and questioned many times about, could he speak English and, was he trying to leave the country or anything like that. He was learning English prior to October 56. And he was...
We have to tell people that Mosonmagyaróvár is located near the Austrian border, the western border.
Correct.
Yes?
So the three of them decided to pack up one piece of luggage with, minimal things in it and start their journey to get out of Hungary. At one point, they had traveled down, I guess, like a country-style road, trying to get across the border, and they finally got across. They were picked up by, I think, maybe Austrian border police. I'm not quite clear on how that works there or how that worked at the time. So they got into Austria, and I guess they were vetted, checked to make sure that, they weren't trying to escape something, or maybe to make sure that they weren't with the Russians, and they were asked where they wanted to go in the world. And the two places that were offered were the United States and Austria at the time, I believe.
Yes.
So they came to the United States. They came into New York, and they lived in New York for a while. And at that time, you had to have a host family that more than likely had to be Hungarian in order for you to not live in the camp in New Jersey. So they stayed with a family. They had a host family. The gentleman's family that they stayed with, they owned a candy factory in New York, and my grandfather worked there for about a year. And at the end of the year, they moved out of their house and moved into New York City and kind of lived there for a little while before they moved to Pennsylvania, where they eventually stayed for the rest of their time. I mean, my grandfather lived in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, which is outside of Philadelphia, for almost his whole life. His whole life while he was here in the United States. He recently passed away at 90.
Familiar with the area.
Yep. So there are a lot of Europeans there, a lot of Hungarians. He lived there until he was 97. He just recently passed away 2 years ago.
Wow.
So he was a very mobile guy, and, still got around really well. While he was there in Lehigh Valley, he worked for Bethlehem Steel for a short period of time, being a master electrician and maintenance person. He then ended up working for one of the bigger hospitals there in the Lehigh Valley, as a general maintenance man.
I see. And did he tell you many things about Hungary and the revolution?
So what's that?
Did he tell you some special things about Hungary or the revolution?
So when he was learning English, he was listening to, I guess, BBC Radio or Radio Free Europe to try to learn English before they left. One of the big things was he knew that he had to learn another language before they left, so that he could, in fact, leave and go somewhere else and contribute to wherever it is they went. He, at one point in time, when he was picked up by the police from his job when he was still in Hungary, one of the times they interrogated him, my grandmother said that he was gone for several days, and she thought that he had been killed. And in their kind of workshop there, they had pictures of movie stars and musicians and lots of people from the United States that were famous at the time, and they figured that that's why they were several people in that company or in that factory were picked up and questioned, I guess. My grandfather had gone back, several times after he had been to the United States and after he had lived here, and he had gone back in the 80s and in the 90s just to visit and see people that he knew. One of the people that he knew lived in his apartment building next to him, and my grandfather, to the day he died, thought that the gentleman that lived next door to him was the one that turned him in to the police because he was trying to learn English, and he knew that my grandfather was trying to leave. When the day that they left, my grandfather said that they left all their stuff in their apartment, and the guy that lived next door to him, he gave him the keys to his apartment, and they left. Years later, when my grandfather came back, he ran into that guy and had some choice words for him, I believe.
Very interesting, John. Extremely interesting. And And tell me, and what does it mean to you, this whole Hungarian connection?
My whole life I've heard, the story and of how they came to the United States and, what it meant for them to leave. And I mean, my grandmother, her family owned a huge, good size family farm and orchard. They had all kinds of fruit trees and things on their property. But for me, I mean, it's always been, I've always known who I was from a very early age. I've always known that I was Hungarian. And I mean, growing up, my dad always said that we were Hungarian Americans. There are three of us. I have a brother and a sister, but we've always been said that we were Hungarian Americans.
So you have double identity, don't you?
I don't. I have never applied for it, but that is on my list of things to do.
Okay. Well, very interesting, John. Thank you very much for telling me this. And now we have another gentleman with us from the United States. He is Louis. He is going to be our third guest today in the Hungarian History Podcast. Welcome on Hungarian History Podcast. This is a special edition. It's about 1956, and I am having conversations with many people. You are the third of them, and they are telling me their stories related to 1956 and about this topic. So, Louis, can I call you just like Louis?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Thank you. Louis, where are you from?
So I was born in Budapest, Hungary, and currently living in Spokane, Washington in the United States.
Oh, it's a beautiful place. Well, I have never been there. I used to live in Denver, Colorado for a little while, but Washington...
Oh, yeah.
Washington is a beautiful place, I heard that. So, and how did you end up there?
Well, so in 1956, we escaped during the Revolution to Austria, and then from there to Germany, and then from there flew eventually to the United States, and we lived in Rochester, New York for 2.5 years, but my parents thought it was too cold and too snowy, and we moved to Southern California and lived in Southern California until I was 18, and then went into the Army for 3 years, and then ended up moving up to Spokane, Washington in 1981.
I see. And do you have some recollections about the Revolution? Stories by your father, for example?
Yes, I remember a few things. Of course, even though I was only 8 years old, I remember some of the traumatic things. I remember that we lived really close in an apartment close to the Danube and only a couple of blocks from the Parliament. And I remember as a young child that when the revolution was first starting, that there was a very large crowd that was marching to the Parliament for a demonstration, and my parents, I think, were inside, but nonetheless, I jumped in and joined the crowd and marched to the Parliament and listened to some of the speeches as a young child, and finally came back home and got in trouble because I didn't tell my parents, but I left. But then I remember also the tanks coming in and firing on the apartments and so forth, and then our decision to try to escape and we actually had a friend who had a little truck, and we loaded all of our furniture and traveled to a town called Szombathely, which is where my parents' relatives were, and one of her brothers worked for the railroad, and we took all of our furniture and gave that to them as before we escaped, and left from a little town called Körmend, and we hopped.
We have to tell the listeners that Szombathely and Körmend are next the Austrian border.
Correct. And we got on a train, and the train slowed down fairly close to the border by a forest, and we jumped off the train and went into the forest with just a few belongings that we had with us, and went into the forest and waited until dark to try to cross the border. However, we spent the night going in circles and got lost in the forest. And I remember the following morning we ran into some lumber guys that were in the forest cutting wood, and we asked them if they could help us give us direction to the border. And they said they could, but they needed some sort of payment for the information. And I remember my dad had to give him his ring and his watch in order for the woodcutters to give us directions to the border. And then I remember we waited until nightfall and then went to the border, and in the dark went under the wire fencing and ran across an area. I guess that's the kind of a demilitarized zone or a no man's land, and it was tilled, but it was also frozen because it was early December. And I remember running across there into Austria, and as soon as we crossed into Austria and went across this area, there were soldiers there from Austria that took us to a place where we were able to get some food and spend the night. So those things I remember.
You are very lucky. Many people were shot during this time, and yeah, it's a miracle that you could cross like that, really. And then you traveled to the United States, as you said.
Yeah, eventually, we spent some time in Austria and then in Germany where they had the camps, a large camp, and people either, from there decided where they wanted to go, and if there was room. A lot of people went to Australia, Canada, and then, of course, United States. They had a quota as to how many people they would take, and we were lucky enough to be in the group that was allowed to come into United States.
It was a fortune, the nicest place on earth beside Hungary. And have you visited back to Hungary since then?
Well, that's an interesting story that when I was going to school in Salt Lake, I met a Hungarian fellow there who was taking some classes for medical school. And then several years later, we kept contact, and he was in San Diego, and his parents and his brother were still in Hungary in the Tokaj area and had a vineyard, and were making wine. And so my friend arranged for us to travel back. Several people went back with him. We had a little tour. He was the tour guide, and we rented a little bus and moved around the area tasting wine and so forth. That was in 2004. So from 1956, I didn't go back until 2004. And we spent about 2 weeks.
Can you speak Hungarian?
I can speak a little bit. Actually, I have a cousin who found me through the internet several years back, and they live in Újkár, and so we've gone back and visited with them also. And I do speak some. I don't always use the right pronouns and verbs, but I make myself understood. I don't read very well, but I can still speak the language.
And it must have been very hard for you to get adapted to American school, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. As a young child, being 8 years old and going to school, I don't recall that it was very hard to learn English as a child, with other kids in the class. But my parents had a very hard time. But I remember as I became older, 12 and 13, I was kind of the interpreter for my parents, because even though they spoke English, it was very broken and it was hard for them to understand. So, but as a child, I didn't have too much trouble learning English.
Oh yes, because you went to school there. And tell me, what does this whole revolution mean for you?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
How did it shape your life, this revolution? So does it have a message to you, something? Do you feel more interested in Hungary or something like that?
Well, it brings, I guess it brings back a lot of different feelings. Maybe not the way it should be, but I certainly have a lot of ill feelings against communism and against being suppressed, and being controlled where there was no freedom. And I was certainly very happy to learn in 1989 when the Russians finally left Hungary and Hungary became a little more free. And so I do have some bad feelings about that, and certainly remembering the tanks going through the streets and firing and shooting at people as a young kid was very traumatic. And so I do have some of those memories and some ill feelings about the whole situation and how bad it was, and also thinking that we had kind of gained freedom, and then a few days after the revolution, the Russians came back and suppressed and killed a lot of people. So
yes.
those are bad memories.
Yes, and perhaps you don't know how lucky you were at the parliament, because there was a big massacre. A big volley was shot from the roofs of the buildings into the crowd, into the demonstrators.
Yes,
a big bloodshed took place. I have some friends who survived that, and that was really bad. So you are lucky that you came home from that demonstration. Very narrowly you escaped.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Yeah, there was very bad times, and certainly a lot of lucky people that made it through there for sure.
Oh yes. So Louis, it is fascinating, and now you have a double identity, don't you? Hungarian and American.
That's true. I've spent a lot more time here than I did in Hungary, but still, my feelings and, of course, having relatives still there draws me back periodically. We've gone back several times, and in fact, we went back in 2006 for the 50-year anniversary, and we're walking in the streets and stuff, and I'm sure you remember there was a little bit of an uprising, and
Oh yes.
and people were tear gassed and so forth, and it brought back a lot of feelings. And it was interesting. The next day, on the 24th, we were going to the big synagogue there in Hungary, and we're walking on the streets, and people were washing the sidewalks, and the tear gas that was used from the night before came up, and both my wife and I had some pretty teary eyes as we walked through the area.
Oh yes.
It was brought back memories for sure.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. Well, Louis, thank you very much for a little conversation that you shared your experiences and memories with our listeners. And now I say goodbye to you, and I thank you again.
Thank you so much. We'll be in touch then. I'll be following you on Facebook.
Thank you. These voices are the individual instruments that compose the symphony of 1956. Together they play a story of resilience that crossed oceans and shape new lives in the free world. Our tribute continues. If you or someone you know has a story to share about the journey after the revolution, please contact me on social media. This has been a special sub-series of the Hungarian History Podcast. I am Szántai Gábor. Goodbye, sziasztok, viszont hallásra!